Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar today, ESS BIZTOOLS subscribers webinar, where we're going to be looking at research and development. So thank you for being with us. I'm Peter Towers, Managing Director of ESS BIZTOOLS. A reminder that the Research and Development Tax Incentive application, which is the registration of the research activities, has to be lodged with Oz Industry by 30th of April 2024. Obviously, this is to do with expenditure in the 2022-23 financial year. There's a significant amount of information required to be submitted for your client to be able to then take the next step towards being able to claim the research and development tax offset for 2022-23. The information that's required relates to the projects that have been undertaken, confirmation that the company has kept the records that are required, and that's spelled out in great detail in our material relating to research and development. You have to certify that the costs have been recorded, the time's been recorded of people involved in the project. The project plans need to be summarised within the return going to Oz Industry, because they're the adjudicators as to whether your client has been undertaking projects that meet the requirements of the legislation. The tax office is looking at the costs involved, but the tax office will not take any action on a claim for research and development unless they've received the documentation they require from Oz Industry. In fact, they won't even look at it. You won't have the information to be able to signify the reference number issued by Oz Industry in your client's income tax return. So you need to make sure that the prior art searches have been conducted, that there is a summary of what the new knowledge intended to be produced is for each of the projects, confirmation that the outcomes could not have been known in advance of undertaking this project, details of any universities or other professionals that have been involved in the research and development or who consultations were with, especially relating to prior art searches, identification of the hypothesis or hypotheses that your client has nominated for the projects. I think it's a good idea that all companies, in particular SME companies, have a document whereby this project has been submitted to the company's board of directors for approval, and within ESS BIZTOOLS product package, we have details of that process and the minute of the board of directors meeting to approve that expenditure and confirmation to come back to the team so that that information is available to be referred to in the document going to Oz Industry. You need to make sure there's been an outline of the systematic progression that's intended for this, the work to be undertaken, and include details of that in the documentation. So that starts with the prior art searches and then goes into the core activities that have been identified for this particular segment of research and development. And what's the strategy for the generation of new knowledge, which is what research and development is all about. And most importantly, a summary of the results of the experiments that have been undertaken. And please emphasize to your client that even though the experiment might not prove their hypothesis, all's not lost. The government will still subsidise that research and development activity because the government understands that there's a lot of dry gullies in this whole episode of research and development. But you need to make sure they've kept the documentation. And a particular project may well show that it was unsuccessful, it didn't work, but as long as the documentation's been kept, your client can still claim the research and development rebate, whether it's the 43% of the research and development expenditure if the company's got a turnover of under $20 million, or it's the calculation that's made as to the degree of intensity of research and development expenditure expressed over the total expenditure of the company if the turnover is over $20 million. So you could have, for companies that have got an intensity of up to 2%, the premium is 8.5% on top of the company's tax rate, say the 30% plus 8.5%, 38.5%. Or if the intensity is over 2%, the premium is 16.5%, meaning that the research and development offset is calculated at 46.5%. The company's obviously with a turnover with a tax cost of 30%. So that's the reminder on the applications to be submitted. Payments to associates is an area that's attracting a bit of attention from the tax office at present. Please remember that even though the company is lodging its tax returns on an accrual basis, there are special rules under the research and development segment that to claim a payment made to an associate, the payment must actually be made. Forgetting all the rules of accrual, the payment must actually be made. And within the ESS BIZTOOLS product package, we have a suggested calculation, because I've worked on projects where there's been carried forward amounts of a couple of $100,000 haven't been paid at that stage. And then we've got the current year's expenditure for 22, 23, and what you can actually claim in the calculations of the research and development rebate is only the amount actually paid. And you need to be able to make sure you can produce, or your client can produce documentary proof that the payment has been made to the associate. That's the one part of the associate problem. The second part is that you have to be sure that the client has kept records to substantiate the CEO or general manager or a member of the board that's been involved in actual research and development work. Just because they hold those positions doesn't allow significant percentages of their time, 50, 60, 70% of their time being charged to research and development project. They will need very good records to be able to substantiate that. They might get 5% for an overall supervisory brief, but not for large percentages of their time. So that's the reminder on associates. Today, I want to discuss some key matters with you. First of all, we're going to look at our paper 052068, which looks at the R&D tax incentive process for the registration. And this is a document that has to be lodged by the 30th of April, if you're on a 30th of June lodgement date. We're going to briefly look at the feedstock adjustment. That's in flowchart 61, the process for doing that. In flowchart 62, we're going to look at record keeping, and in flowchart 63, we're going to look at the clawback calculation. Now, this relates if your client has received government grants for a project, and part of it is the research and development. So part of the government's money has been spent on a research and development. The government wants to claw that back, so we have to make declarations. And bear in mind, of course, that the tax office will know that a government department has approved grants to your client, and they will probably be looking for a clawback. And if there's no clawback, you will need to have a reason as to why there was no clawback. None of the money was spent on the activity associated with research and development. Just make sure that's a correct comment by your client. And we're also going to look at the final checklist on research and development tax incentive and the records for the year. So there's a fair bit to, and we're not going to thank you for your participation at this stage. We're going to move on so that we can look at this whole thing. So I'm just going to stop share. So you should now be able to see on my screen the research and development area. I'm just going to download the content. And we're just going to go through those items which I mentioned there. I'll just get my list back in front of me. We're going to go to paper. So the papers, this is all the material on research and development, which I hope you're familiar with. But if not, can you please have a look at it? We're going to go to the paper. You should now be able to see the paper. (052.068), which is paper that summarises what has to be submitted as part of the annual return that goes to AusIndustry. You need to be able to determine costs that have been incurred. So we're referring back now to material in paper 052065, which is where we have the detailed summary of record keeping required and the allocation of the costs under labour and labour on costs, contractors, competent professionals and other direct costs. So these costs can be summarised. And then we're going to have supporting research and development costs. Remember, the supporting costs have to be treated separately. So you've got those costs. You will require the detailed profit and loss account for the year. This is the profit and loss account that's intended to be lodged in the company's tax return, or is based on the company's profit and loss account. Feedstock adjustments need to be shown. So this is where research and development expenditure has been undertaken on something, some activity that has then generated sales. So income's been earned from sales of product generated at the end of the research and development phase. There's an offset has to be prepared because the government doesn't want to allow all of that expenditure under the research and development conditions. So there's suggestions there. And we then move into the payments to associates, which we just discussed. And I believe that everything I just told you has been summarised in this area relating to payments to associates. So hopefully that will help you get through the projects. You need to have a list of the research and development projects that are still on hand at the end of 30th of June 2023. And our suggestion is you show the project code number, the project title, the date your client commenced, when the last entry was made. And then we have a list of what I think is the due diligence review that you need to undertake with your client. The appraisal of projects for research and development. And what we have here is the BAS forms that you can link to. So this paper encloses all this, the Board of Directors minute, the planning for the systematic progression of work, employee time. It's a software project, go through that project checklist, the results of the systematic, my apologies, progression of work, and other information. As you can see, we've summarised it all there. You might not need all that for your client, but I think you could work through it. Overseas work. Did you lodge an overseas finding? If your client didn't, you're not going to be able to claim it, and it's very difficult to obtain approval for overseas work in any case. Did your And if your client did get approval from the ATO, you need to attach a copy of the ATO letter to the return that's going to go to Oz Industry so that they know that the ATO was happy with that. In fact, I suspect that whenever the ATO issue those approval letters, they've already sent them to Oz Industry and probably communicated with Oz Industry to seek clarification that the research could not be done in Australia for some reason. Approval from ATO for an advanced finding. It's a good idea to remember the client that's proposing to undertake research and development activities can apply to the ATO for approval before they spend $1, other than putting the application together. If they have got that approval, enclose a copy of the approval letter from the ATO in the document going to Oz Industry. Thanks. And then you've got the actual registration form. They want to know the number of employees. They want to know the number of employees engaged in R&D activities. And they want you to describe the new knowledge intended to be produced by the core activities. And then we've got the individual project information. And I've had clients where there's been 20, 30 of those projects that all have to be summarised. Some of them you might only have one or two. But whatever your client's got, you need to put all that together so that you can complete this overall form. Now, as you know, if you're also preparing tax returns, that all of this has got to be done before the company's tax return can be lodged. And if your client's company is trading at a loss and they're anxious to get the tax rebate paid to them in cash by the ATO, well, they should have been talking to you a long time ago, back in July, August of last year. It's now going to take some time because Oz Industry will take, at this time of the year, 2 to 3 weeks to issue the approvals, and then that approval reference has to be included in the tax return and then lodged with the Australian Taxation Office. So anyone at this stage of the year who is anxious to receive a refund is probably going to be waiting for a while. So you might have to tell your clients that and suggest to them that next year they're in to see you in late July, August with all their records. And I know that's one of the problems. A lot of them just don't seem to have those records ready in time. Okay, so that's the summary of that paper, and I'm now going to move to one of the flowcharts to just take you through that process. So we're going to flowchart 060. And I'm just going to stop the share. And flowchart 060, supporting research and development expenditure, summarises what we're trying to do here. We've got components of eligible research and development. You've got the core activities, and you've got the supporting research and development. Obviously, you cannot claim any supporting unless you've got at least one core research and development project that the expenditure under supporting relates to. So activities that are not core research and development may be supporting R&D as long as they're working in conjunction with a core research activity. We then have a whole summary of information that could be claimable as supporting, and it's cross-referenced to paper 052060, item 2, item 3, etc., etc. So you can work through that if you've got clients. And then we've got comments on the software development and supporting research and development activities. So hopefully that is able to be analysed by you. Next one we have is feedstock adjustment. Feedstock adjustment, we have some detailed comments in the paper 052062. And basically what this is where an item has been included in the research and development expenditure that has been sold. So it can be the final product that's been produced as part of research and development. It's been sold. We need to quantify what the quantity and value of that product that was sold, so that an adjustment can be made to the claim that's been made for research and development. So if your client's not selling any of the feedstock, well, that's all right. You don't have to worry about this. If they are, there's the summaries that we've got in the system. There's the flow chart, which tries to explain to you what is happening. And then there's the detailed paper 052062, which summarises all aspects of this process. If you have any queries on that, if you can let me know, we will get that information to you. I now want to move on to research and development callback calculation. And this is local. Check the So if your clients received any grants for work that was undertaken as part of research and development, there is a callback calculation that has to be made. And we've got full details in the paper 052063, and you can go through this flow chart and follow the process through. And the process is different for companies with turnovers under $20 million. It changes then from the categories of 20 million to 50 million turnover, and then it changes again over 50 million. So we've tried to set that out for you so you can follow through and get the adjustment sorted out correctly so that you can understand what the adjustments will be. I'm now moving on to the next item I want to show you. and that is the Research and Development Tax Incentive Flowchart. Which is looking at the costs that have been incurred, the profit and loss account, and in fact, this is one of the early ones that I did discuss with you. So that is the overall treatment of research and development. I know it's a lot more detailed than that, but I'm just trying to give you a reminder and a refresher that this information is available within the ESS BIZTOOLS product package. If you have any questions, please contact me. I'll do my best to be able to give you an answer or an understanding of how we see it. Good luck with the lodgement of these returns that are due over the next 4.5 weeks. And you've got Easter in between, you've got Anzac Day as well. So hopefully you haven't got too many of them that you've got to get completed by the 30th of April. Thanks for your support of ESS BIZTOOLS. I'll talk to you again next month when we have our next client session, our member subscriber session on various aspects of the ESS BIZTOOLS product package. Stay safe. Have a great day. Goodbye.